It's May 8th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with a clash over unifying the conservative candidacy for the upcoming June presidential election. People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo says he will not fall for what he calls his party's attempt to remove him as the party candidate and pledged to win the election after he and independent candidate and former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo failed to agree on a merger on Wednesday. The two plan to meet again on Thursday. The U.S. Federal Reserve has left its key interest rates unchanged in the 4.25% to 4.5% range for the third straight time on Wednesday. While citing greater tariff uncertainties, the Fed chief says he will wait until such uncertainties become clear before making a cut. Plumes of black smoke emerged from the chimney on top of the Sistine Chapel with no new pope elected. Cardinals will now vote 4 times daily until one candidate achieves a 2/3 majority. Amid pressure to create a coalition between Conservative Party candidate Kim Moon-soo and former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo in the upcoming presidential election, their first attempt towards the move largely failed on Wednesday. With a tight election schedule ahead, it's no walk in the park. We have our political correspondent Oh Soo-young on the line. Good morning, Soo-young.
Good morning to you, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, let's begin with this emergency press conference by People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo this morning.
Sure, Tammy. In an emergency briefing Thursday morning, Kim refused to give in to party pressure and the so-called roadmap to merge with independent candidate Han Duck-soo, accusing the PPP leadership of trying to drag down his campaign despite having legitimately won the party's primary. He called on the party to halt its unilateral merger plans, threatening litigation against what he called an undemocratic and illegal takeover of his campaign. He rejected a televised debate planned by the party at 6 p.m. between Kim and Han, saying that they should hold one next Wednesday instead, followed by 2 days of polling to decide on a merger. The PPP has been pushing for its main candidate Kim and former PM Han to join forces in the presidential race against their main opponent, the Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung, who currently leads the polls. Han and Kim came second and third respectively in recent public surveys. Now, after emerging as the leading PPP candidate last weekend, Kim has argued that it should be him, not the party, that leads efforts towards the union. The candidate added he will continue sincerely working with Han to reach an agreement. Now, this comes after their 75-minute talks on Wednesday fell through, with Kim complaining that while he set out a proposal, Han said he entrusted the matter entirely to the PPP. Han, for his part, said that if no agreement is reached by May 11th, the registration deadline for candidates, he will not enter the race. Kim says he has contacted Han afterwards to propose a second meeting on Thursday at 4 p.m. Han's side has accepted, but has also suggested that the two hold more extensive talks in the evening.
Right, Soo-young, and following the briefing this morning, there was some panic within the PPP, which came up with emergency measures to prompt the merger, right?
That's right. The PPP leadership held an emergency meeting on Wednesday and announced a so-called roadmap towards unifying the two Kim and Han campaigns, starting with a one-on-one televised debate between the two candidates at 6 p.m. on Thursday. However, of course, that has fallen through with Kim's rejection. But they will still conduct a poll on the two candidates from 7 p.m. until 4 p.m. on Friday, beginning at 7 p.m. on Thursday until 4 p.m. on Friday, evenly reflecting party and public preferences. PPP spokesperson Shin Dong-wook said the leadership invoked a special clause in the party charter to prompt emergency measures in the candidate selection process, and he said this was justified, citing a poll that showed 87% of PPP members support a Kim-Han union before May 11th. Meanwhile, senior party figures have taken dramatic action. 9 PPP advisors, led by former chairman Kim Woo-sung, launched a hunger strike on Wednesday, calling the merger a moral imperative. Now, lawmaker Kim Mi-ae and floor leader Kwon Sung-dong also joined in, with Kwon on Thursday blasting Kim Moon-soo's latest remarks. Some party members, including former presidential contenders, have criticized the leadership, saying that their push for a merger undermines the legitimacy of the party's candidacy procedures.
Well, the merger really is easier said than done, it seems. Soo-young, we'll have to see how the talks today proceed. Thank you for keeping us updated. In the meantime, things are working out for the Democratic Party's presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung, with a major legal hurdle cleared for him, as the High Court on Wednesday decided to postpone his election law violation case retrial until after the election. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
The first hearing for the retrial of Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung's election law violation case has been rescheduled from May 15th to June 18th after the 21st presidential election. The Seoul High Court announced on Wednesday that the postponement was to ensure the defendant has a fair opportunity to campaign and to avoid any controversy over the fairness of the trial. The court added that it has always conducted trials independently and fairly based on the Constitution and the law and will continue to do so. This comes after Lee's legal team submitted a request to the court on Wednesday morning to reschedule. The Supreme Court last week struck down a lower court's acquittal of Lee, sending the case back to the appeals court. The party, which has been urging the High Court to postpone the hearing, and Lee welcomed the court's announcement, calling it the right decision.
This is a critical time when the people are practically exercising their sovereignty. So it's extremely important to ensure nothing hinders that process. I believe the court made a rightful and necessary decision in line with the spirit of the Constitution.
The People Power Party, on the other hand, expressed regret over the decision, with floor leader Kwon Sung-dong saying the court gave in to pressure from Lee's side. The same day, the Seoul Central District Court also postponed Lee's trial related to a land development scandal, one of 5 cases he is currently facing. Hearings were originally scheduled for May, but the court rescheduled it for June 24th. At the Parliament, a DP proposed amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act has passed the National Assembly Legislation and Judiciary Committee, led by members of the DP, despite a boycott by the PPP members. The amendment aims to halt legal proceedings once the defendant is elected president. Meanwhile, Lee on Wednesday continued meeting voters across the country, this time visiting 전라북도 and 충청남도 provinces. During a visit to 전라북도, he asked for support, saying that local governments issuing more vouchers and providing basic income where people receive regular, unconditional payments would help increase the rural population. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
As widely expected, the U.S. Federal Reserve decided to leave its interest rates unchanged, citing economic uncertainty and rising inflation. Now, it's the third consecutive rate freeze since U.S. President Donald Trump took office, despite ongoing pressure for rate cuts. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The Federal Reserve held interest rates steady at 4.25 to 4.50% on Wednesday amid growing economic uncertainty fueled by U.S. tariff policies. Fed Chair Jerome Powell cited slowing job growth and rising inflation as key reasons for the freeze.
The risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation appear to have risen.
The Fed also pointed to the economic uncertainty surrounding the White House tariff policies.
The tariff increases announced so far have been significantly larger than anticipated, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain.
Powell further emphasized that the inflationary impact of these tariffs could vary widely depending on their duration and scope. This marks the central bank's third consecutive rate freeze since President Donald Trump took office in January, with each Federal Open Market Committee meeting so far opting against a rate hike. Trump has repeatedly pressured the Fed to cut rates, arguing that his tariff strategy should not lead to economic slowdown or higher consumer prices. Despite this, Powell says the central bank's decisions remain independent. He stressed that the Fed will continue to focus on maximum employment and price stability. As for the timing of potential rate cuts, Powell avoided a direct answer. He said the Fed will, quote, wait and see how things evolve before deciding on its next monetary policy steps. The Fed's latest decision leaves the U.S.-South Korea interest rate gap unchanged at 1.75 percentage points, based on the upper end of each country's benchmark rates, with Korea's current rate at 2.75%. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Trade officials from the U.S. and China are set to meet for their first round of negotiations in Geneva this weekend. Despite some momentum building up between the two major economies, Trump says he's not lowering any tariffs for China before trade talks begin. Lee Jae-myung has more.
Amid escalating trade tensions between the United States and China, U.S. President Donald Trump said he won't lower his 145% tariff on Chinese imports before trade talks happen between the two countries. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Wednesday, Trump was asked if he would be open to pulling back on his tariffs in order to bring China to the negotiation table, to which he simply replied, no. The comments come as Beijing said earlier that meaningful negotiations would only happen if Washington lowers the 145% tariffs first. His comments come as a meeting between U.S. and Chinese trade officials is set to take place in Geneva on Saturday. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are set to meet with China's economic chief He Feng in what could be the first step towards de-escalating tensions between the two economic powers. Speaking to Fox News earlier this week, Bessent said the trade talks will center mostly on de-escalating tensions and not on a big trade deal. Last month, President Trump raised import duties on Chinese goods to 145%, despite scaling back on his reciprocal tariffs on almost all other U.S. trading partners. China retaliated with steep tariffs on U.S. goods, further escalating the trade tensions. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve left its key interest rate as it is for the third straight time on Wednesday. According to the Fed chief, Trump's tariff threats has had a snowball effect, but not to the point that it's pounding the U.S. economy just yet. Let's turn to Professor Kim. So the rate freeze was not too much of a surprise, was it?
Right. It is not. Actually, even though the President Trump has been making increasingly urgent calls for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rate, the Fed has decided to keep the interest rate as it is, as you mentioned. And there are two reasons for this freeze of the rate. The first is the outlook on inflation. The latest consumer inflation report saw a 2.4% year-over-year rise in March, which is above the Fed 2% target. However, it is still rather low compared to what could come. The one-year outlook compiled by the University of Michigan stand at 6.5%. The main driver of the jump in inflation expectation is, President Trump's tariff policy, which is projected to raise cost of consumers. The second are the numbers that shows the stability of U.S. economy. The latest macroeconomic figures have continued to hold up, and in some cases look relatively strong. A surprisingly positive April non-farm payroll report issued in the last Friday boosted investor confidence and pushed the stocks higher. In other words, market is not indicating that a recession is imminent.
So is that where Powell's confidence that the U.S. economy is okay coming from? Because I do have to point out U.S. GDP in the first quarter of this year did contract 0.3%. Where is this confidence coming from?
Right. Yes, as you mentioned, the real GDP of the U.S. decreased at an annual rate of 0.3% in the first quarter. In the fourth quarter of 2024, real GDP increased 2.4%. When we see the numbers, it looked like the U.S. economy might be in a bad shape. However, when looking at the numbers in the investment, consumer spending, and export, you may understand, Powell's confidence. The decrease in real GDP in the first quarter primarily reflected an increase in import, which are a subtraction in the calculation of GDP, and a decrease in government spending. The Trump government, reduced its government spending for the efficiency. These, movement were partly offset by increases in investment, consumer spending, and export. The sum of consumer spending and gross private fixed investment increased to 3.8% 3% in the first quarter, compared with an increase of 2.9% in the fourth quarter. The price index for the gross domestic purchase increased 3.4% in the first quarter, and compared with an increase in 2.2% in the fourth quarter. The personal consumption expenditures, price index increases 3.6% compared with an increase of 2.2%. All, numbers are very good.
Right. Well, numbers are indicating the U.S. economy is okay for now. But when will a rate cut take place then, according to Powell?
Well, in my humble opinion, it won't be soon. Now, we'll see the Trump tariff policy to take effect in like a 6-month period. So probably the Fed will be able to make a move around September this year. So that means, the fourth quarter, right? If the negative effect of tariff policy take effect, the inflation will take off and the economic growth will stall. Probably recession will start. This scenario effectively paralyzed the Fed, which can't respond to both problems at once. In this situation, Fed, need to make decisions where to go. So at the point, Fed will make, the rate cut, to boost up economic growth at the cost of inflation.
Well, Professor Kim, all these economic uncertainties are stemming from tariffs, reckless tariff push. Now, first official talks between the U.S. and China on trade are taking place this weekend. Now, will anything tangible come out of the talks this time, or will it be more like a warm-up?
Wow, that will be like kind of gloomy to me. According to U.S. Treasury Department, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is heading to Switzerland on May today, right? Where he will meet a top business, representative from China. But China's Commerce Ministry said that any dialogue must be based on mutual respect and equality, and added that a negotiated solution is only possible if the U.S. acknowledges the impact of its tariff measures and correct its erroneous practice. It's a quite strong statement.
Indeed.
Considering this statement of Chinese Commerce Ministry, the talk between two countries won't result in tangible outcomes soon. And also, it is very clear when we look at the statement of the Secretary Bessent, I quote, "My sense is this will be about de-escalation, not a big trade deal. We need to de-escalate before we can move forward." So this might be just warm-up.
Well, maybe nothing too fruitful, but they did manage to put themselves in one room for now.
That's
Professor
right.
Kim, before I let you go, Trump threatened to impose tariffs on all foreign-made films and pharmaceuticals. Where is this tariff threat coming from when we thought he was taking a break from them?
Well, I'm not sure, what are the goals of Mr. Trump, want to achieve through tariff policy and how long, the tariff policy lasts. However, I understand why he's using the tariff. Let's look at that, tact he said. Trump said tariff will encourage U.S. consumers to buy more American-made goods, increase the amount of tax raised, and lead to huge levels of investment. This is very optimistic about tariff policy. He also argued that America has been taken advantage of by cheaters and pillaged by foreigners. By using the tariff policy, he wants to achieve, some of the goals, like blocking illegal immigrants, and illegal drugs, from reaching the U.S. We see around September, when the actual negative effect of tariff, take place, then how Mr. Trump maneuver that situation. And he might give a break to the world around that time.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for connecting with us. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me.
Thousands of people gathered at the Vatican on Wednesday, now only to see black smoke billowing from the top of the Sistine Chapel. Voting to choose a new pope continues on Thursday with 4 rounds of voting. Iuni has more.
Black smoke rose from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican on Wednesday, signaling that the conclave had failed to elect a new pope on the first day. As the dark smoke curled into the night sky, a wave of disappointment swept through the crowd gathered at St. Peter's Square, many of whom have been waiting for hours.
It's an immersion. It's an immersion to be here, especially, and we will be here again tomorrow. It was expected to be black smoke today for the first vote.
The black smoke from the burning ballots came more than 3 hours after the start of the conclave, taking longer than expected. This was an hour longer than it took for smoke to appear after the first vote in the 2013 conclave that elected the late Pope Francis.
I would like it to be a pope who continues the legacy of Pope Francis, meaning that he's a more open, more liberal pope, because that is the way to attract people to the church.
To be elected, a new pope must secure at least 89 votes, a 2/3 majority. The conclave will resume on Thursday, with 133 cardinals from 70 countries voting in strict secrecy.
Yes, we'll come back tomorrow because we live here. So tomorrow from the morning, we'll be on the lookout to see if there's white smoke.
When a pope is chosen, white smoke will emerge from the chimney. Starting Thursday, the cardinals will hold 4 votes a day, 2 votes in the morning session and 2 in the afternoon. Iunhee, Arirang News.
North Korea has launched multiple ballistic missiles toward the East Sea. Several projectiles, presumed to be short-range ballistic missiles, were launched from the Wonsan area at 8:10 a.m. on Thursday, according to Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff. This marks the first launches in around 2 months and the second since the current U.S. Trump administration came into office. The South Korean military is looking into specific details and said it is maintaining a full readiness posture while closely sharing information with the U.S. and Japan.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Israeli airstrikes have struck densely populated areas in Gaza City, leading to more than 30 deaths. On Wednesday local time, Israeli airstrikes struck a crowded market and a nearby restaurant in Gaza City, resulting in the deaths of at least 33 people. The market was packed with people when the airstrike hit, causing immediate fatalities and injuries. Shortly after, a nearby restaurant known to be operating as a community kitchen was also hit, leading to additional casualties. The Israeli Defense Forces have stated that their operations are aimed at targeting Hamas militants. However, they have resulted in significant civilian deaths, drawing criticism from the international community. Germany's new government, led by Friedrich Merz, has announced plans to tighten border controls. The plan aims to reduce illegal migration and address concerns over security. Germany's Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt on Wednesday detailed the government's strategy to bolster border security, including the deployment of an additional 3,000 police officers at the border. This would increase the total border force to 14,000. Stricter checks will be conducted and undocumented migrants will be turned away at the borders. While the new measures aim to deter illegal crossings, vulnerable individuals such as pregnant women and children will still be permitted entry. The policy marks a shift from the previous administration's approach, which allowed many asylum seekers to enter Germany. Chancellor Merz emphasized that these actions are necessary to restore order and public confidence. Following a meeting in Paris with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Wednesday that France will support the gradual lifting of EU sanctions on Syria if Syria maintains a trajectory towards civil peace and harmony. Macron emphasized that if Syria continues on its current path, France will support the progressive easing of EU sanctions and lobby the United States to consider similar actions. Meanwhile, the Syrian leader also mentioned that Syria is engaging in indirect talks with Israel to prevent further hostilities in the region. Finally, Walt Disney announced on Wednesday that it plans to open its first theme park resort in the Middle East, selecting the United Arab Emirates capital Abu Dhabi as the location. Disney's 7th global resort and first new theme park in over a decade will be on Yas Island, a popular destination with many other family-friendly attractions. The project is a collaboration with Mural, a regional developer known for creating immersive destinations. The new resort aims to blend Disney's iconic storytelling with Abu Dhabi's rich culture and modern architecture. Disney CEO Bob Iger said the project will be authentically Disney and distinctly Emirati.
We're expecting a beautiful warm day across the country on this Parents' Day. Just a reminder, there will be a big difference in temperatures throughout the day today. The sunny skies are in the forecast. In fact, the sunshine could be too strong, boosting UV rays to very high levels in most parts of Korea. So please don't forget to apply a good amount of sunscreen before going out in the sun. And this afternoon, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju will be reaching up to 25 degrees Celsius. Air will be clean nationwide. Meanwhile, the clouds will start to roll in from tonight and get ready for rain tomorrow. It will begin in the southern regions early tomorrow morning before spreading nationwide. And this rain could be quite heavy at times, especially on Jeju, where we might see up to 50 millimeters falling per hour. Rain will also bring much cooler temperatures to the country, and it will stay below norms throughout the weekend.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
제21대 대통령 재외선거.
세계 어느 곳에 있어도
내가 국가대표라는 마음으로
누구보다 땀 흘리죠.
지금이 국가대표임을
보여줄 기회.
대한민국 국민의 권리.
대한민국 국민의 의무.
반드시
투표합니다. 국가를 위한 대통령 투표. 제21대 대통령 재외선거. 중앙선거관리위원회.
2025 celebrates the 80th anniversary of liberation. A place filled with culture, history, and diverse experiences. This is the Independence Hall of Korea. Upholding the values of the independence movement, and together with the whole nation, we will make Korea great. The Independence Hall of Korea.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insight, new style, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, May 8th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're tuning into News Generation. Joining us today is Ki Kim.
Happy Thursday and happy Parents' Day.
Happy Thursday and happy Parents' Day. And Julian Kim.
Good morning and happy Parents' Day.
Happy Parents' Day too. Now both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. We're going to begin our show with our keyword news. Our keyword for this Thursday is Human Development Index, or HDI. Now, according to the 2025 Human Development Report by the United Nations Development Program, South Korea has been ranked 20th in the world in terms of quality of life, a slight drop from last year's 19th place. While Korea's HDI score actually improved, rising from 0.928 to 0.937, the country's overall ranking dropped by one spot as other nations progress more quickly. HDI is a comprehensive measure of a nation's development based on life expectancy, education levels, and gross national income per capita. For South Korea, life expectancy is now 84.3 years, expected years of schooling is 16.6 years, and per capita income based on purchasing power parity is about $49,700. So starting with you, Julian, how should we interpret Korea's slight drop in rank despite an improved score? And looking at Korea's life expectancy, income, and also purchasing power parity, are there any particular strengths or challenges that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I would say that we are doing a pretty good job, but the slight drop does really highlight just how competitive the global development truly is. Now, just from the data alone, we can really see just how good the quality of life is here in South Korea. And I do think that for the future, this country should not only just focus on growth, but also sustainable development, especially when we think about work-life balance.
So to really keep up the ranking, right?
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on this finding, Ki?
So when you actually take a look at the record of HDI for the past few decades, Korea showed tremendous growth, especially since the 1980s. Managing the 20th is still quite remarkable. And looking at other countries, the U.S. is now at 17th, with the two other countries, including New Zealand, Japan at 23rd. So we're competing at the highest level in the world. And even the report says that we have a strong medical program, one of the best education systems in the world. Per capita income might not be the highest, but it still shows a relatively stronger economy and stability. But as we're going through a political turmoil, many countries are concerned. We do need the leadership back as soon as possible and make sure that we stabilize the politics first. Then, like Julian said, we have to look for the sustainability.
So maybe we'll see the index or the score go up once we have a new administration, because currently Korea is experiencing a leadership vacuum. And that was our keyword news for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Now, May is Family Month here in Korea, as it's packed with days that celebrate the people closest to our hearts. For example, we just had Children's Day this Monday, and today we honor those who raised us. Take a look at the screen for more on today's topic.
Today is Parents' Day in Korea, a special occasion to reflect on how much our parents have done for us and to show our gratitude through thoughtful gifts or by spending time together, often over a meal at their favorite restaurant. In light of Parents' Day, today on NewsGen, we're going to dive into how the traditional concept of hyodo, or filial piety, is evolving today in Korea.
So we're going to begin our episode today on a personal note. So starting with you, Ki, you are both a son and also a parent. So starting off, how are you planning to spend Parents' Day this year?
Well, where am I? I'm right here in the studio, so I got a lot of work to do today. So this year it won't be too big, but normally what I would do is I would give some gift money to my mom, and we would have a meal together. With my son, I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm pretty sure he would make this carnation flower at the kindergarten he goes to and bring it to me later tonight. I can't wait to see, now that he speaks pretty good Korean, and now he's learning how to write too. So he may write a letter or he may draw something, and I'm looking forward to it.
Right, and Key just mentioned carnation flowers, and in Korea, it's kind of like a custom for you to give your parents these red carnation flowers that really express your gratitude to them on Parents' Day. Now to you, Julian, how are you planning to spend today?
Yeah, well, I did not prepare any carnation flowers, but I did prepare some gift money for them. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to spend some time with them today because of my schedule, so I'm looking forward to being able to spend quality time with them this weekend. And now in America, it actually is Mother's Day on Sunday too, so it does work out for my family too.
All right, so as today is Parents' Day, today we're going to also delve into the concept of hyodo or filial piety. Now this has been a core cultural value in Korea and much of Asia, which is heavily influenced by Confucianism. To give you a bit more of a background explanation, for generations it was considered a given that children would care for their parents in old age, which is seen as a way of repaying a life's worth of love and sacrifice. But these days it seems that this dynamic is shifting because recently there has been growing talk around something called a filial piety contract here in Korea. So Key, for our viewers, what exactly is this and how does this contract sort of work?
Yeah, like you said, some of us are maybe familiar with this tradition, but parents raise their children and children grow and natural. Parents get old and the children take care of parents. And this is common in Korea or in the Asian regions as they were strongly influenced by Confucianism. It was just a common thing. But recently, there's something called filial piety contracts that's taking people's attention. It's a formal agreement where parents bequeath assets in exchange for care and support. So for example, parents inherit a certain amount of assets, normally real estate like apartment or other types of housing. In return, children pay a certain amount of living expenses to parents until the parents pass away and pay them a visit once or twice a month or for the holidays or birthdays to hyodo or being a good son or daughter. And if the children fail to do so, then children have to give back the real estate property that were given. And this highlights how traditional filial piety or duty is increasingly taking contractual form in modern society. There was even a case lately where a father who signed a filial piety contract with his son and has made headlines by demanding his termination, claiming the son has failed to uphold his obligations because the father had transferred property to his son under the conditions of monthly allowance, regular visits, and spending birthdays together. However, after the son allegedly neglected these duties, the father took the legal action, and this news obviously is saddening.
So this is definitely something new. It sounds even surprising compared to the traditional relationship between parents and children that we've often seen in Korea. So I want to ask you, Julian, why do you think we're seeing more parents and children agreeing to signing a contract where they kind of trade being a good son or a daughter in return for their parents' inheritance?
Yeah, so, well, this is a complex issue, and certainly more discussion should be had because this topic is becoming increasingly more relevant in our generation. But from the parents' perspective, especially as life expectancies continue to increase, it is becoming harder and harder to estimate just how much money they need to save for retirement. And there also is the concern that Key has mentioned that once children receive their inheritance, such as property, they neglect their parents and they don't support them financially or just even spending time with them. So as a way for parents to, in a way, build a safety net for themselves, they choose to draw up this contract between them and their children. And now from the children's perspective too, many are agreeing to sign the contract with their parents in order to receive the inheritance sooner and be able to have more security with their finances. But in reality, there really is only a small number of families that have enough wealth to warrant a formal contract like this. But in situations where children have financial means but still fail to support their parents, there also has been legal cases where parents have filed lawsuit claims to support payments.
Right. So we've heard from the parents' perspective and also the children's perspective. Now, to find out how people feel about this, we ran a poll on our Arirang News YouTube channel. We asked our viewers, would you be willing to sign a contract that states you'll take care of your parents in return for receiving an inheritance? When we looked at the results, 33% said yes, while 67% said no. And we're going to take a look at 3 comments. Our first comment for this Thursday is by Andrew O. Fei-Yuar. Any contract carries a risk of breach, and with that, the risk of litigation. Why would anyone want to subject their own family members to that? SPC 1982 says, if your child knows compassion, love, respect, and appreciation, he or she would willingly take care of their parents. A contract is unnecessary. DS92KO says, I think it helps clarify expectations and responsibilities on both sides so it can prevent misunderstandings and emotional pressure later on. So if we look at the poll results and also the comments from our viewers, the opinion is slightly divided, but many people until now think that this new concept of filial piety contract is quite new and quite unexpected. So the idea of putting care expectations into a contract suggests that supporting one's parents, something once considered really natural here in Korea, is now being reconsidered. So I want to ask you, would you say that the definition of filial piety is changing?
I think so. So what my grandparents or parents thought and what I think or what younger generation think and my son's generation would think would all be completely different. And the number tells you the story. So if you take a look at the screen, according to Statistics Korea, fewer people now believe that the responsibility of caring for elderly parents lies solely with the family. Instead, more people think it should be shared between the family, the government, and society. So as you can see, in 1998, 90% of the people thought the children should take care of the aging parents, and only 8% thought parents should handle their own care. But last year, in 2024, 60% thought it should be shared responsibility between government and family and society. 17% thought parents should handle their own care, and 18% thought it should be relying on the whole family. So traditionally, supporting one's parents in old age was seen as a core value of the filial piety or duty. Parents expect that once their children reached adulthood, they would naturally take on the role of caregiver, just as they had done for their own parents. But things are changing now, so as life expectancy rises, retirement lasts longer, and the burden of support grows heavier. At the same time, the younger generations are struggling to find stable jobs and secure their own future, making it difficult or even unrealistic to prioritize supporting their parents. So this shift reflects broader socioeconomic realities, and in fact, only a small number of elderly parents nowadays say they expect to be supported by their children.
Right.
So it's a sign that the traditional model of filial piety is definitely changing and maybe needs to evolve to keep up with the times. And in a couple of weeks, it'll mark 2 years since my dad passed away, and I always regret how much I have not done or how much I could have done to pay back to my father. But at the same time, I don't want to leave any burden to my son either, so it's just tough.
So the perception is definitely changing here in Korea. Now, for a more broader view and to sample more opinions, after the break, we'll be joined by a young guest from Spain. Stay with us.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
For our interview segment today, we're joined by Spanish Gen Z Fabio Gonzalez. Welcome back to the show, Fabio.
Hi, happy Parents' Day.
Happy Thursday. So Fabio, we'd first like to ask you, we've been talking about the filial piety contract in the first part of our show, so we want to ask you, have you heard of this idea? And after listening to our conversation earlier, what's your take on this contract?
Well, I'm actually pretty new to the concept, but I would say that I do understand the intention and the possible benefits. But I would say that turning emotional responsibility into a legal obligation seems a little bit dystopian, almost out of a Black Mirror episode, I guess. If we really want to fix the situation, especially, for example, in South Korea, where we have elder abandonment. I guess we really need to focus on the why. Is it because there's a generational gap in terms of identity and also values? Is it because the government is not supporting both parties properly? Whatever it is, it feels like this kind of contracts are just a solution because both parties want the benefits, but they're not willing to take responsibility to fix their inner issues. You know, those family issues are to be fixed by showing actual care, and that comes from a heart that is, you know, it's not all about putting a band-aid on a generational wound. It actually takes love, care, and family values.
All right, Fabio, thank you for your answer. And it may be a bit early, but looking ahead, how are you planning to support your parents when they retire? And do you imagine living with them or provide the direct care, or are you considering some sort of different options?
I'm considering all options. Whatever it is, I do want to give back all that I can because I do have a pretty good relationship with my parents and they have been taking great care of me. And as I'm jumping into adulthood, I want to make sure that every single step that I take is going to be fruitful and possibly I might be able to turn that into a way to support them in the future. So even if it's living together, whatever it is, if it's going to be helpful for them, I'm willing to take some risks.
Great. And just to wrap things up, though, if you become a parent someday, do you expect your parent or your child to care for you in return? And how are you preparing for life after retirement?
Well, if I do become a parent, I feel like I expect my kids to take care of me, but not because they feel guilty or because they feel like it's just a thing that they have to do, an obligation. I want them to do it because they want to. And I feel like that's going to take a lot of emotional groundwork and effort from my side to be a good parent and I guess be a cool dad, share ideas, share values, and have a good relationship with them. I feel like care, love, and responsibility comes from the heart. And to achieve that, you really need to set the ground for it. I also plan to be a little bit independent so that I don't rely on that in the future. But currently thinking about retirement is a little bit tough for me since I'm still figuring out my work life. But whatever it is, I just hope that in the future, if I have kids, we keep it cool.
All right, Fabio, thank you so much for your time today. Always a great pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so after our discussion today, we can clearly see that the meaning of 효도 or filial piety isn't fixed. It's actually evolving with our times as families, finances, and also our expectations change. So ending off, what does filial piety mean to you? And in other words, what do you think is the best or ideal way to care for your parents?
I mean, it's all, I think, emotion. Like this morning, my mom sent me a photo of a flower that my sister has given her in a group chat. And you, on the other hand, is dressed up as a red carnation flower day. So I'm like in a mid-generation. So for me as a son, I would probably stay very traditional, take care of my parents, my mother as much as I can until we're together. And also a father, I would support my kid until he becomes a grown-up. And just like Fabio said, if he can be supportive of me, that's great, if he's willing to do that. But otherwise, I wouldn't want to give him any burden, especially financial burden. So there it is. I would probably stay in very Confucianism, conservative, traditional way.
But you don't want to burden your kid.
No, because that's how the society is changing. And yeah, I would stick to that.
I see. What about you, Julian?
Yeah, well, the relationship between a parent and child, while often very close and loving, is very, very complex too. Now we're gonna add finance to that mix, and each party's expectation just became much more difficult to navigate. So everyone has a unique relationship, everyone has their own expectations, so there really is no one-size-fits-all answer for this. But for me personally, my goal is just to work hard and be able to support them if needed. But other than that, I just really, if you have the good relationship with your parents, I would say just show your appreciation with them. You never know how much time we have with them, so it's always good to show how much appreciation you have.
We are ending on a very lovely note today. Once again, happy Parents' Day to all the parents who are tuning into our show today. And that's all we have for today's episode of News Generation, but we will be back tomorrow, Friday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Ki Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Julian Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for staying with us, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
How to survive in Korea. Workplace. Step 1. Lunchtime. The most important morning